It's game on for women and girls, but as the gaming community grows, so does online harassment. One survey of players in the US and the UK found that 2/3 of female gamers have experienced threatening behavior from male counterparts. One organization is working on fighting that toxic culture and building a strong community for female participants. I speak to Verta Maloney of GameHERs.
I met Maloney at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the largest showcase of consumer technology in the world. Maloney is co-founder of GameHERs, an organization for women gamers to meet and play. The mission is to advance the role, voice, image, and power of all female gamers.
You can't imagine something in your own life if you don't see it out there. And at my big age, I had a moment recently where that same thing happened. I was like, oh my gosh, I had this experience. And I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that as something possible until this very moment. And so imagine a little girl, 15, 17, 12, not being able to see someone like me just out there talking about video games can be fun. You can do it. You can make a career out of this. And you don't even have to always play. You can be a professional in the space is so important.
A decade ago, a loosely organized misogynist online harassment campaign emerged, known worldwide as Gamergate. It was started by the ex-boyfriend of a game developer and grew into a symbol of the threatening environment that many female players face.
We did a program in 2015 with some women gamers talking about Gamergate, which was the hot topic to talk about in 2015.
Yeah.
Here we are now, and I'm so delighted to have a chance to talk to you because I'd love to know how the trajectory has changed. Has things improved dramatically? I suspect not.
Your suspicions are correct.
Yeah, but maybe, for those who've forgotten Gamergate, maybe you can go back and talk about it. I mean, it was horrific talking to these women and just how awful it was.
Yeah.
And I think the landscape still is pretty kind of bad out there.
What I will say about Gamergate is it was, to be corny, it was a game changer, right? It put a spotlight on something that I think that many people were aware of, maybe didn't want to talk about. And so I know that they get a lot of backlash around it. Oh, we have done this, but it was so essential. And I think that I exist in the space because of the people that decided that we're going to shine a light on this, right? And so the thing that has changed is that more people are having the conversations. The thing that is the same is that I don't know how much movement is happening to make sure that women, we can go into a lot of things, right? Because there's all the intersections. Women, people of different races, LGBTQ plus community are not harassed when they game. And that still happens, right? So even within our community, having conversations with people, I think at this point, still about 60% of women will turn off their voice comms so that they don't have to speak, so that someone's not going to come with some kind of toxic nonsense, right? That's still the case. I had conversations with college-age gamers, and it was all women or non-binary folks that we talked to, and they said that on their college campuses, on their esports teams, clubs, they're still experiencing very toxic sexism and racism. And so we have come into the space at a time to elevate and amplify and also put money into the hands of women so that it's not beholden on someone else to kind of make those changes from a financial perspective as well. So it's still the same.
Two things. I think a lot of people were not aware that women were gamers and really into it.
Yes, which is wild,
and
but
then,
yes.
And then the other piece of it is, I don't think people recognized that there were a lot of really toxic males out there that were misogynist and had really kind of skewed, crazy viewpoints.
If you've never experienced something like that, it's hard for you to understand the psychic burden, if you will, of one, I want to play this game and I really enjoy it and I love it. I might actually want to be competitive at it and I want to beat everyone. I want to win. But if the two of us are sitting, there's all of this other stuff that I, as a woman, have to think about that might happen in that game. Is someone going to say something about, they want to date me, or, I don't know, get into sex talk, or I can't be good because I'm a girl, or all of these things, right? So there's that level of it. As a Black woman, I have to then think about all of the racist and the racial slurs that might pop out there. And so just the fact that I have the burden of having to think about that I can't play as well as you. In any athletic situation, if someone hasn't slept well the night before, if someone's like, hungry or whatever, their performance is not going to be at the same level as someone who doesn't have to think about that. And so when we then see girls stopping at middle school because they don't want to deal with that anymore, who wants to deal with all of that? And they're not stopping playing, they're just stopping being real public about it and like playing with people that they don't know, right? And so that's cutting them off from all of these other opportunities and also just a pathway to doing this in a competitive and professional way, if that's something that they ever wanted.
GameHERs works to build community through events and an app that allows gamers to connect with one another.
We launched officially in March of 2020, and like lots of good ideas, drinks were involved. And it was around what would it be like? Well, one, it was a meeting with these executives. It was a room full of mostly men talking about how gaming and esports is the next big thing, right? And so a couple of my co-founders were in that room, but looked around and was like, at least like 150. And they were like, one hand they could count the number of women that were in that room. So it was like, are we really going to do this again? And I think actually Niles Heron, he's a founder of Pop Dog, he got on stage as a black man and kind of said the same thing. Like he didn't see as many, like a lot of black folks in the room. Like, are we really going to do this again? Talking about this billion-dollar industry. And so for us, it made us start to investigate. So let's talk to more women. We just started calling women that we knew, but women that we didn't know all around the world, and just talked about so if something existed, like what would you want? And they talked so much. The toxicity, all of that is so true and real. And that's not all that we want to talk about as women within the video game space, right? It's not all that we want to be known for and identified for. It is true, something needs to be done about it, but we want to be elevated and amplified. They said we want to have a space where we can share our stories. We want to, if this is a billion-dollar industry, we want to make some of that $1 billion in this space. We want to be game devs, and we want to actually get access to studios where we can create and be in the room and create these diverse characters. And so for us, we said, okay, so how would we do that? Let's create a community. Let's bring together this community. One of the things they also said is, if I want to find another woman who games, it's been really hard. I just put something on Twitter. I do this thing and you play Fortnite? And I don't know. And so creating a community where people can come together and know that there are other women there, there are other femme-identifying folks, and there are men there that kind of rock with our mission. So if you're going to get into a lobby with them, they're going to be cool, and they're going to not just let all of that toxic stuff happen for you. And so we said, okay. And so kind of this idea was born, and we decided to go for it and create the GameHERs.
It reminds me of the movie "If You Build It, They Will Come," but
Yes,
you don't necessarily,
Field of
you don't necessarily know if they will come.
Yeah.
So when you first create this, did you think it was going to take off, or did you think, oh, I'm going to do a lot of this, or?
Well, one, because women make up half the globe, and
Had a good start,
we had a good
right?
start there. I think also, stats say that half of people that identify as gamers do identify as women. So we definitely knew that there was something there. Community is, and this I say 80-20 rule, I don't always want to generalize, but women love community. And stats even showed that if they're going to pick a game, they're going to go to their community to kind of talk about that, as opposed to just advertising, right? That comes to them. And so it's just a different way that we move in the space. And so yes, we felt like community, if that's the core, then yes, then people will come to this. So yeah.
It's a safe space out there. It's a great idea, but what do we do to address the other piece of this, which is that toxic culture? How do you change these guys that are out there operating in this space, and why are they so angry and so mean?
So I can't speak on behalf of them on the why there. I will go back to what I said before about the macrocosm that is, I would say, very close to me, the United States, but broader the world, is that we do operate in a world that has toxic masculinity as a underpinning of how we are where we are in 2023, right? So that is just a part of that. And so how do we stop that? I think that it's going to take men who are not that, or who are doing their work to understand what it means to dismantle those beliefs within themselves, and that want to do that work, to get their other men in order and in line, and talk to them and say, hey, that's not cool. If we're gonna play, that's not cool. We're not gonna do that. Or why are you even saying that? What does that mean? All of those things, they have to investigate it. I think too often it's seen that if it's an issue for women, that women then have to solve it. And I think that's actually where the switch has to happen, right? So we don't necessarily want to be seen as an organization that's just here to solve that. Like I said, we're not just talking about that toxicity. We want to talk about how do we get jobs and how do we like change this? How do we have marketing that not, that is like geared towards us in ways that actually meet our needs? Like if I'm a mom and I'm pregnant and I want to keep gaming, are you creating a chair that's going to accommodate that? Like those are the types of conversations that we also want to have. And we want men and allies and people that want to see that for themselves as well as other people in their life and in the world to like start doing that. That's one way I think that it has to be solved. I think the second is starting with younger generations who kind of, in my opinion, like I love young people because they've grown up in this world of technology. They've grown up with social media and there's certain things that they just don't tolerate. Like they will literally drag you and they'll say, no, we're not talking like that. They're gonna tweet about it. They're gonna do all of those things. And how do we learn with and from them about how to create a space where we don't tolerate the things that used to be tolerated as far as behavior goes. We are not even saying that all men are like this. The problem is that enough are that it has created a situation that is not safe and that's really harmful to anyone who is not a man in this space. And so it's really going to take all of us to do that and men coming together around that.
Talk to me about when you first got into gaming and what does it mean to be a part of that community?
So I always would say I'm gamer adjacent, meaning that I was like the person that would watch people play games. Honestly, the Jersey Shore arcades, like when I was little is kind of where I would go. It was Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man's better. She actually made more money than Pac-Man. And so that's kind of where it started for me. But I wouldn't say, I was like nervous to play because I didn't, I like to be good. I'm a little bit competitive. And so when it came back into my life was when I was in my 20s and I would play with my kid's dad. And so we just like played video games, Rainbow Six, things like that. And it was just kind of fun. It was nerve wracking. And I'm like, I'm a stressful gamer. I'm like, oh my God, and stuff like that. And so that's where it came in. And then because he was really big into gaming-ish, our kids were, right? And so this is where it's playing with them, watching them play, being a part of their lives, which is part of the gaming for me. And then co-founding the GameHERs, I'm like back into playing some games a little bit more. So that's my game story.
Talk to me about that sense of community, though, that it creates. Why is it so special? Just kind of talk people through who may not be gamers who are watching this.
Well, I think to be able to create community with someone that you have never actually met IRL, but that kind of gets you because games are kind of like certain personality types in a sense, right? So someone that gets you and like, oh, so you have your whole team and you're running ops for the team and like having all these conversations. And that community is beautiful because sometimes there are people that have anxiety or they're nervous. Like it's harder for them to just like walk up to someone in the cafeteria and be like, hi, you want to be my friend? And so this is another way to get into that, like into creating community. And I think sometimes you find people that are your people that you may not have approached or may have not encountered in the real world, right? And so community is at the core of that. I think gaming is what brings people together, but then you talk about other things. You find out things in each other's lives, and that's like really important.
GameHERs also provides educational programs for teens and college students. It's just launched an accelerator program for women entrepreneurs in the gaming industry.
I think one of the things that you're really advocating as well, it's not just that, create a safe space so girls and women can play games. It's that, empower them. I mean, it'd be nice to see them in the industry really represented in a big way.
Exactly.
How do we turn the page there as well?
I think the first thing is acknowledging that the numbers are low. And we need to then track back as to how do we shift that. It's that we go to middle schools and we figure out and make sure that girls keep playing games because that's one route to that. And they understand that you can get here through that, right? So it's, I think, unpacking the data and understanding that it exists. I think the other is the stereotype is that it's just young boys in their basements playing video games, and that's not true. And I think that does a disservice to men that play video games as well, because it's like so outdated, it's antiquated, and it's just not true. And so understanding that there's the diversity of those that play games is huge and broad. And when we think about competitive gaming, we need to open that up to a different variety and arsenal of games, because then you're going to start to see, right, if we're not just doing like League of Legends or Apex, but if we start to include some fighting games in that, if we start to include other games in that, then you're going to get a diversity of people and a diversity of thought as far as on that competitive landscape, and people will say, oh, I can do that. And then the other is, this is not necessarily what I always just say to college kids, anything that you can think of as a job, you can probably make it happen in any industry. So if you love art, you can find something that's probably, and video games, something exists. You just have to figure out how you want to follow that passion and create it. I personally, at first I didn't really get like how doing all the things that I did when I was younger, president of Black Student Alliance, doing all of these like activist things, and wasn't called that back then. It wasn't like you could put that on your social media, but those things were always so important to me. And okay, wait, it's also can be important in this space as well, right? It's me, I'm the special sauce, so to speak. So kind of understanding that. And then the last thing I'll say on that is give people a chance. I think that oftentimes women don't get a chance to like mess up, to like try something again. Oh, you don't have all the qualifications. Oh, you need to do this free internship. First of all, internship shouldn't be unpaid anymore. Like, stop it, right? Because only a certain segment of people can afford to do that, right? Like, we know who they are. And so like pay for internships and then give people a chance. I say this even within the space of like funding. Fund more women, even though you may think, you know what, this is not gonna work. Well, do you know how many men got the opportunity to fail on that project in order to like fail this, and now you're making $1 billion. So give them a chance. Really.
It's going to be a really interesting future because women at the controls are going to bring something entirely different than guys.
Exactly. I think women at the controls, but also women on the creation, right? And so I think that is, I think that's the beauty of it. People think that just by having a woman like at the table creating the game means we're going to have more playable women characters, and that's not true. It means we're going to have more diverse playable characters across, because what women in that intersection are bringing are lots of other stories, not just that one story. And so I agree. And I think we just don't know what we don't know, right? Because right now we have blockchain games coming up into the space. We have mobile games like really, really taking over. And we have gamers also across a wide range, right? So even if you look at, I think if you look at women like 38 plus, like how many older women are playing games and video games? And it'll be really interesting to see like kind of what it is that we bring into the space as well. So I'm excited for the future. Hope to be here.
I think you're going to be there in the future. Verta, thank you so much.
Thank
It's been
you.
a delight.
It's been fun.
Thank you.